Anyway, so
chef's kiss, as our friend Kevin Smith, friend of Mark Bernardin, friend of the podcast would say.
But yeah. By connection, friend of the podcast.
So where are we? Let me just readjust after we were talking horse shit.
I know we were talking about last time. Last time I did these in kind of chronological order, and basically we can go at any point here. I think what we'll do is we'll probably start earlier. So let's start with, I know we said we'd save all the Cronenberg stuff, but this is such a big part of Canadian horror in the 80s that other than Videodrome, which I want to save for another one. So this is Dave Cronenberg's intro into mainstream, basically. Dave Cronenberg's The Fly. So we did The Fly, and then we had a couple years later, 2 years later, we had Dead Ringers, which was friggin' nuts. So those 2 in a row for him really catapulted him into the American eye. So The Fly is a remake of the 1958 Vincent Price film, which Vincent Price isn't really in that much. He's more into The Return of the Fly than this one. But this is a classic tale that we all know well, where basically a scientist has a matter transporter, gets into it, figuring that he's going to stuff around, gets in there with a fly, and they swap DNA, and he comes out as a hideous creature. Now, in the original 1958 version, he comes out with the head of a fly and one of the arms of a fly. And I have to say, if you haven't seen the 58 Vincent Price version, it's extremely powerful. It's really graphic, actually, to start off with. It's quite gory. I was actually really surprised. I watched it with my kids, figuring this would be a little more friendly. And it is a bit abrasive to come off first because, you never really saw this much blood before that time. So this one is shot in color, and one of the early color films. And it is actually quite horrific to start off with. Now, flash forward to Dave Cronenberg, who, if you are familiar with his work, is also quite graphic and has no holds barred on the gross out scenes and so on and so forth. So this one stars couple at the time, or probably got together on this shoot, Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis. And George Chavello, of course, friend of the podcast, George Chavello. Is he dead?
I don't know.
Anyway, it's one of those things.
Certainly career-wise. Well,
yeah.
I was gonna say,
fought Ali, that man.
Yeah, I was almost confusing him with Angelo Muscat for a minute there, right? Oh no, he got punched out the other day by a fucking BC Lion quarterback. But
yeah, I heard
that's Angelo Muscato. That's a different guy.
Yeah, way different, way different. He didn't fight Ali. Muhammad Ali, of course. So anyway, this is a story. Basically goes in there. This one is one of the great gross outs of the 80s. If you're familiar with his other stuff, like Scanners has the great scene in there, the head explosion scene. Michael Ironside's in that one. This one here even takes it further. So if you can think of all the debauchery done with The Fly, again, one of those movies that, give a director with a big budget. I don't know really if it was more effective that he had the big budget, except that he could get the stars and the special effects that he needed, where Cronenberg has proven in the past that he doesn't need that budget in order to be really, really effective. However, with the industrial lights and magic and all that kind of good stuff, does add some good stuff. I read a cool story about this one is that Jeff Goldblum, being in this one, actually wrote Vincent Price a letter and sent him ticket to thanking him and hoping that he would enjoy this version of The Fly as much as the original version. And Vincent went and saw it, and he thought it started off really good. He goes, then it went a little too far, in his quote, Vincent Price, went a little too far. And anybody seeing this would probably know exactly what Vincent was referring to. So really
when Jeff speaks, friend of the podcast, George Chavello, in
or
arm
Jeff
wrestling.
Goldblum.
And that's when Vincent Price said, that's it, I'm out.
Yep, done.
Yeah.
He was done. But nonetheless,
and he walked out.
A pretty powerful tale, which also spawned a sequel. So the original Fly from 58 spawned 2 sequels, one of which I still haven't seen. I have, but still haven't seen. I've seen Return to the Fly, and then there's another Fly film. I forget what's.
It's Fly 2, the first one.
No. In the original one, so it's
okay.
Return to the Fly. Vincent Price is in that one, and he's the lead in that one because he's only a supporting player in the original one. And then Curse of the Fly, I think it's called, and nobody's in that. But they played on there. Now we have Jeff Goldblum, Gina Davis in the first one, and in the sequel, for some reason, it's Eric Stoltz. and
fresh off getting booted off of Back to the Future.
Back to the Future. So yeah, he's a little bit humbled there. Is it 86, right? But
I mean, again, I don't want to harp on because Lord knows you've done 3 episodes on Tarantino, and we should have done 3 on Cronenberg. But
we will
this is where he goes. He goes from 15 years of writing his own stuff to okay, I'm going to do my contemporary Stephen King adaptation to I'm doing The Fly. And not that it's his Hollywood apex, but it's pretty close because the next 3 years are nothing but very big, what we'll call Hollywood vehicles. And then
I don't know this for a fact, but I think that I personally believe that this was not something that Cronenberg said, let me do, because he wasn't really, I think this is something they came to him with and said, this is what we're looking for. And we'd like to use Cronenberg, this Canadian.
Okay, yeah, but if you're in the early 80s, I mean, think of you, whether you're the Disney guy or the fucking, or you're the early 80s guy going, okay, I got Frankenstein, I got the werewolf, I got the Fly, I got Black Lagoon.
Hey, but these are
the
producers,
Fly
man. So
perfectly fits with David Cronenberg.
oh, totally. And that's what I think the producers came up with, is that we're looking for something. We get this young upstart Dave Cronenberg from Canada, of all places, to make a film. Here we go. We're going to try The Fly. And again, it paid off. It paid off in spades. I mean, that year, that movie and Aliens came out the same time. And I remember thinking as a kid, so I would have been 13 years old, and figuring like, this is the greatest summer ever. But anyway, powerful stuff in this one. This one is the great gross out. So a lot of things about Cronenberg is other than I mean, he is very visceral. He is raw, especially in his earlier stuff. He doesn't really hold back here, which I can't think of too many 80s big budget horror films that were as over the top as this one. Now, since then, yeah, that's easy. But up to this point, I would say that you're probably not going to get bang for your buck the amount of gore and depravity that this one offers. And I mean, it offers it in spades. It is a payoff. I don't think anybody went to other than real fans of The Fly, I don't think anybody went to this looking for a horror film that wasn't a big, huge fan of the original one, not feeling satisfied that they didn't get their money's worth. As a horror movie fan, aficionado, I can say that this is, for that time, this would have been the payoff of payoff, which is probably one of the reasons it did so well, especially when you're competing with films like Aliens, which also has a real great gross out factor, not nearly as much as this and not nearly as action orientated. But I mean, even from the basic stuff, when the arm wrestling scene between George Chavello and Jeff Goldblum, I mean, that's gross scene, right? I mean, still to this day, when I watch that, it makes me cringe. So watch out, man. This guy eats chocolate bars.
Well, I remember even my father watching it, kind of stepping into the movie halfway through as I'm watching it for the third time on TV or something. It's not going to go well for George, right? Like he can catch on. He catch on immediately, right? Go, oh. But no, I mean, and again, I don't have to sound too much like Tarantino, but in the pantheon of, okay, these are updates of the horror classics that this is one of the best, easily. I mean,
yeah, I'd say of it. I mean, I remember seeing it and reflecting, even as a young fella, and not being as big on it as I am now, because I was such a huge fan of Vincent Price's version, and thinking that they didn't stay true to what it is. But again, when you go back and look at the 58, yes, it was groundbreaking for the time, but it's a really basic story. They hardly ever leave the laboratory in that film.
They never. Well, I was going to say this one almost, with the exception of when you need to cameo George Chavello, you almost never leave, the Seth Brundle apartment.
But you always get like, there's so much more to it, which they, at the time, 1958, which I'm sorry if I'm fucking up the time on this one, but I'm pretty sure it's 58.
Oh no, I mean, yeah, I'm talking about the
dick in a glass sitting in there, all the parts that have fallen off him that he's saving. And again, the gross out factor is way higher and way more
without a doubt.
shocking
Yeah.
than anything that was ever done back then.
I mean, this is.
And even
I
in
mean,
the
it's
80s.
great. I mean, Gina Davis looking like a fucking smoke show, fucking for no reason. Jeff Goldblum, same way.
They had actually worked together before that on Earth Girls Are Easy, so that's the one where they met.
I believe it.
And I think
believe it.
yeah, this is the one. So that one was from the hell. No, Fly was first. Fly was 86, and the Earth Girls Are Easy is like 88.
Fly's 86. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was the other way around.
Just good looking people.
Good looking people. Anyway, it doesn't
Photogenic
really
people getting photogenic.
Exactly. Anyway, we could go on about this one forever. I think we've kind of showed our load on this one. Anyway, we will do a whole episode on the other Cronenberg movies that we haven't covered because he definitely deserves that.
And we'll do a live watch along of the original Crimes of the Future because I said it in the last podcast.
Yes, whenever. I mean, I'll hold Rob to that, so he has to organize it. So,
Join Rob and Blake for
next up, let's talk about another Canadian, a different monster, but let's talk about Gingersnaps. So, Gingersnaps, Emily Perkins, excuse me, stars in this coming of age werewolf film, which, again, this has been done several times since, these coming of age horror films where they're coming into their own. And man, I've watched a ton of them since Gingersnaps, but Gingersnaps here is really is the innovator coming through with this stuff. And again, this doesn't get much more Canadian than this, the budget, everything like that. But what it does so well is it combines, again, a coming of age story that on its own, let's take the werewolf right out of it, does a really good job of dealing with a lot of issues of teenagers today coming of age.
Yeah.
Once you put the werewolf aspect, which is really bloody clever, into it, really, I mean, it knocks it out of the park. So this one here, this one is a lot of fun to watch.
Yes.
Why can't I remember the other girl's name? It's Emily Perkins and
Catherine Isabel.
Catherine Isabel. Thank you. And Catherine Isabel,
friend of the podcast.
Yeah, friend of the broadcast, has done a lot more. Done a lot more horror movies since then. So I mean, there's American Mary, which if you haven't seen, is probably her best film. I'd say for her as a star. But this film, this coming of age werewolf film, where basically they're coming up. She's bitten. She's just getting discovering her sexuality. And Emily Perkins looks like a werewolf. Actually, when you look at the cover, you always figure it's her because you got the big monobrow going on. But it's Isabel Perkins that is actually going through the change. So this is a lot of Jennifer's body. This is a lot of stuff that people have.
There it is. And there's another one. Very good pull for the younger crowd.
I watched another one that had Tim Curry and Grace Jones in it. That was pretty much the same. Anybody can remember off the top of their head what it was called? It's not really that memorable.
Are you talking about Vamp?
No, not Vamp. This one had Tim Curry and Grace Jones, and they were both older. So this is in the 2000s.
We're going to do a 3-hour episode on Vamp.
Oh, I love Vamp, man. I think
Love
that
that
scene with Billy Drago, that still haunts me to this day. He was the coolest vampire pimp in the world. Like John Carradine can't hold a candle to Billy Drago in that film.
Yep. Jesus.
Yeah, him too. But if you're looking for
friend of the
podcast, Billy Drago. No, he's dead.
Jesus.
Grace Jones.
Yes, absolutely.
Grace Jones. Yep. Slave to the rhythm. Hey, big call out to Chad Johnson from Brooks. I'm not talking about the hockey player. I'm talking about the little 5'4" guy that's one of my best friends that's getting married this fall. And he's watching as well. So I said I'd give him a call out and let him know that people are thinking about him. So Chad Johnson, this one's not for you, but we're talking about you.
Talking.
Oh, wait a minute. There's a God damn it. Every time I hold up a beer, you can't see Charles Bronson's fucking guns right in front of it.
Well, that's because you got a thing. Yeah.
I know. I do have a thing. And next week, I'm not sure. I really like Charles Bronson, shooting people behind me, but maybe I have to change it up next week. Anyway, Gingersnaps, again, not trying to give too much away with this because there's a lot of fun to be had in this. But again, transformation scenes, all that kind of good stuff is done really, really well. Direction is strong on this one. There are a few things with regards to editing that I would personally change. But other than that, overall, I mean, I'm not saying the editor did a bad job, because they didn't. It's just the things personally I would have changed. But overall, I mean, this is again a seminal Canadian horror film that definitely has spawned 3 sequels, and I'm no doubt that they'll probably fucking drag that horse out of the barn again and run her around for Gingersnaps the next generation. But again, the next 2, by comparison, aren't nearly as good. You're doing a sequel, and then you're doing for the 3rd one a prequel. And actually, I have to say, I kind of like the prequel, which has Hugh Dillon in it, overacting. Friend of the podcast, of course.
I've talked to Hugh Dillon a couple times.
Have you?
Podcast.
Well, there you go. Then it's official.
Yeah,
it's official. Hugh Dillon likes.
Nah, I can't say that. Just I've talked to Hugh Dillon a couple times.
It's official. Hugh Dillon has talked to Rob Brown.
He was in a band. He was in a band back in the day, and in my former life, I used to be a music editor and reporter, and we talked in Lethbridge once, and then in Brooks, Alberta once.
Well, Hugh Dillon also is probably best known for the movie Hardcore Logo, which is a Bruce McDonald film. He plays the lead in that, and actually bringing Quentin Tarantino back into the fold again, wanted to get him and use him in some way. And I still say to this day that he probably will, but they did talk. Because if you haven't seen Hardcore Logo or any Bruce McDonald film, fuck, man, do yourself a service. You can't go through Canadian film and not know who Bruce McDonald is.
In your opinion, where do you think he would have fallen, Hugh Dillon, friend of the podcast, in Quentin Tarantino land? What was the character he was being reading?
You know, the funny part is, I know it was
friend of the podcast, Quentin Tarantino.
I know it was written for. Well, we're going back to, that was done in '94. That film.
Is that Hardcore Logo?
Hardcore Logo, I think it was '94, and Julian Richling, who I'm a huge fan of, and is also Canadian. And again, Julian Richling, friend of the podcast. You would recognize Julian Richling in a heartbeat. Yep. He is a great actor. He finally got his own film called Ejectica. That is, I produced a horror movie called Hellmouth that he has a small part in, along with another hero of mine, Stephen McHattie. Just name dropping all over the place here.
We'll give away. We can give that swag away. We've got them still.
That swag away. Actually, what we'll have to do is we have some friends there that do Canadian horror films, not nearly as based, but we should do an episode back on that. We'll do Ejectica, we'll do Hellmouth, and we'll do Hexecutioners, and I think that'd be a fun one. Let people know. What was it? Monster Brawl?
Yep.
No Exit? What the hell is the Civil War zombie one they did?
Yes, you're right on.
No Exit?
Yep.
Anyway, I liked it.
Very close. They haven't done a bad one.
No, I've enjoyed their stuff for the most part, and again, so much so that I invested heavily into it, and produced a couple of their stuff, helped produce some of their stuff, but they're definitely good people. Jesse Cook Thompson, I'm gonna fuck it up now, and he's gonna go, "You're an idiot." Anyway, it doesn't matter. Anyway, Gingersnaps, again, solid Canadian horror cinema. I don't know if we've done it too much justice here. If you haven't checked it out, again, another one, put it on your list. Good shit. Next one that we're going to
just right about. Before we leave, our friends at Gingersnaps, our friend Isabel there, when she becomes the werewolf, and then she goes from, for people older than us, she turns from the Betty to Veronica because she's got the werewolf in her.
Well, and that also
very similar and equally as good to a movie that just came out called Freaky, where when Vince Vaughn switches places with the 19-year or 15-year-old, the actress playing the girl, when she's all of a sudden has to go from shrew to fucking do. Great change, great flip.
What I love about this is that it takes those, it basically takes something I'm unfamiliar with, female hormones, and when they go unbridled, and that's what I like about this. Is this puberty or is this something else? And again, for the person going through it, you're questioning a lot of this stuff and going, is this natural? Anybody else watching from outside that's gone through it go, fuck no, it's not natural.
Yes.
There's something very, very wrong with you. However, as a teen, when you're going through all the shit, you're going through depression and anxiety and fucking your highs and your lows and all that kind of good stuff. What makes it cool is that, and we've all been there, we go, okay, I totally buy why she's questioning this and not going to like, is this normal? Like, this is puberty. Like, this is her sexual awakening pretty much in the film. And like you hit the nail on the head, going from the Betty to Veronica character, which they did a really shitty job of in Jennifer's Body, but did a much better job of here, earlier movie, I believe. It uses more of a soft touch rather than a fucking hammer on a drum, right? To quote the Paolas.
Friend of the podcast.
Of the podcast. Paolas. Bob Rock and Paul Hyde.
I was going to say friend of the podcast, Bob Rock. But I mean, they did the switch better in like Father Like Son with Dudley Moore and Kirk Cameron, where they just fucking, all of a sudden Dudley Moore and Kirk Cameron are, they've done the flip better than they did in Jennifer's Body, for God's sakes.
Like Father Like Son. Vice versa was Judge Reinhold and Fred Savage, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
There it is. See, we got to go down movie, that idiotic.
The exact same movie.
Yeah.
But worse.
Movies you've seen 3 times.
Yeah. And people don't get tired
of brown mac and cheese, Trash and Treasure Show.
Exactly.
Make sure you type it all in. Otherwise, you can get some macaroni cooking recipes.
Exactly. When you type in brown mac and cheese, you get a actually brown mac and cheese recipe. So you have to type in the whole goddamn thing.
Until Johnny Depp takes over the thing, and then it becomes a recipe, which is a thing you probably don't want to eat.
Oh, God, Mr. Hanky. So Gingersnaps 1, 2, and 3. We're only talking about 1, but they got 3 sequels, and of course, part 3 has Hugh Dillon in it, and is a prequel. So I think that did it. Now we're going to get on to. Are we cutting this here? Or are we going for?
No, unless we're running out of time. Just a good bit.
Fuck, I don't see a timer up here. So
No.
So we're on to. I'd say my favorite of the whole show. Not that I don't like the other ones, because I do, but my favorite of the show, and I think this is Rob's favorite of the show too, if I had to call it. This is Tony Burgess, friend of the show, Pontypool. So Pontypool, if you have not heard of Pontypool, you're doing yourself a huge disservice. This is of modern horror films. This is the one. This is basically zombies via radio waves, if you want to call them that. So Stephen McHattie, who deserves a freaking Oscar nomination for this role, plays a shock jock who's on there. And basically something is coming through on the radio waves that is changing people violent. And again, the whole beautiful part about it is that we have such a great social commentary. Is the filth that's coming out of his mouth infectious? Or is it, I mean, does he have the power to change this? Is the filth coming out of his mouth infectious? And like I said, I love this movie on so many different reasons. On a political reason, on a social commentary, this movie's fucking brilliant. You're not going to do much better. Yeah. On just a pure horror kind of a film, horror suspense, if you will, this film is brilliant. Yeah. This is Guillermo del Toro said this was one of his top 10 horror films of all time. So
I can't argue with him.
Guillermo, I mean, if he's saying it. And I'm pretty sure I've heard some nicer things coming. I want to say Tarantino, but I can't really back that up. If Quentin's watching, maybe he can put
or it's Friends of the New Beverly.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe Nicole Jennison wants to peek in on this one. I'm not sure. Matt Prepost.
Yeah. So people like
anyway, they all have valid opinions. But anyway, Pontypool basically takes this thing and delivers with such great suspense.
Yeah, I mean, good Lord, they're out of control.
Hang on, I'm just looking up something. You go ahead and talk there while I look.
Well, no, I mean, Pontypool is one of those ones. And again, it's seminal for so many reasons. You don't want to get into the nationality, but it's very much in the same way like Reservoir Dogs was, where you go, my God, this piece that this writer has written works in every genre. It could be a short poem.
Actually, It's funny coming through all this. I totally forgot to mention that. Just talking about Bruce. Bruce McDonald directed this. So again,
Yes.
Canada's one of Canada's greatest directors, right up there with, in my opinion, with probably not for notoriety, but right up there with Dave Cronenberg is Bruce McDonald, and he directed this one. So this one's awesome. Written by Tony Burgess, who again has written a lot of other films. This is probably his most well-known, but not to toot my own horn, but he did Hellmouth as well with Steve McHattie. And
Never heard of it.
Of other ones. Never heard of it. Perfect.
Sounds made up.
Make sure you buy a copy today. In fact, you can find it on MGM, whatever. Anyway,
On many adult sites out there.
Yeah, I believe Julian Richard's not in this one. But anyway, what I like about this is the same thing that I love about the original Dawn of the Dead is the social commentary. So even if the film was shitty, which it's not, I would have really appreciated, or even if they did something that didn't make it nearly as effective, I would have appreciated the social commentary. And I have to say that the Americans there was an American remake of this with Bill Moseley that was done called Dead Air, which is pretty much the same film, not nearly as good. The writing's not as good. The direction is not as good. Bill Moseley's awesome, but I'd still say in this instance, Steve McHattie is Canada's Lance Henriksen, as far as I'm concerned. He's kind of God. So said I can't say enough good things about this one as well. Of these films, this one's definitely my favorite. Not that The Fly doesn't, not that all of them aren't great. This one's definitely my favorite. And if you haven't seen it, you've probably never seen anything like it.
Very much
before this date.
Very much
before this one was made.
Oh, well, I'm such a contained unit, right? I mean, other than again, people that are interested in movie production.
Holy shit! I gotta get a beer. Hang on.
You don't need to. Everybody here, Charles Bronson and friends of the podcast, you don't need to leave the room that is the radio booth. Some of that hinges on the writing. Some of that hinges on the fact that what a great idea, what a set, and then much of it and most of it hinges on the actor that's controlling.
Right. It's okay. It's all under control. I got another one, not to plug it again, but Deep Cove's very tasty coffee organic blonde ale. It's going to explode.
So very much the actors controlling the set. And in this case, you have Stephen McHattie.
Sorry, were you saying something?
Let's see. Here we go. So we have Stephen McHattie playing Dennis Siebel and controlling that, just that news environment, right? And again, very much so.
Rob doesn't know anything about
one of the rare ones where I have a filmic connection, and then at the same time where I met McDonald and fucking.
You meet Bruce McDonald?
My second week in Winnipeg, back in 2018, when after we had that big party, I was looking for shit to do, and then Bruce McDonald live watch Pontypool, and we had seen it the year before. Because we were going to do it as a play with our friends at Tumbleweed Theater.
Yes, because that was something that somebody else had done. And I wanted to talk to Tony Burgess about actually doing that as a show. And I still think to this day, it's fucking gold to do that. You
realize, like, again, we're giving away the sauce, how you make the sauce right on the podcast here. But
that's all sizzle, no steak.
You realize you and I could do, 3 or 4 dates in the places that you and I are popular in, co-founders, Victoria.
Yep.
And just go, that's it. That's all you need. You do that every 3 years. Get the fuck out of here.
Right? I would work with Dan Doherty. Dan Doherty, who, if friends don't know, is the runs the Calgary Horror Con, the greatest horror convention in Canada. I would work with him to do this. Call out to Dan Doherty, friend
of the podcast.
Well, it
would take about 10 minutes though to write. I mean, we could run the
thing. We use the script. Fuck it. No, fuck that. I'd say, Tony, can I have what do you let me have? Like, give me license here. Anyway, now that we've shit the bed on this, I'm sure a lot of people will take this and fucking run with it because.
Yeah, but I'll bleep it all out.
Because there's 14 people watching this.
Going beep, 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 beep. I'll just bleep it. It'll be good. And then every once in a while, Michael just says, niggers. I knew it. He's racist. He's a fucking racist.
I think Rob's had too many silver bullets now. Good thing he's not a werewolf. Sorry. Anyway, you edit that out, right? I don't know. Well, you said it, so it's not like Blazing Saddles. So we got Ponte. More beans, Mr. Taggart. I'd say you had enough.
Ponte beans.
Pontypool. Of this show, if we're going to say to watch anything of this episode, that would be my pick.
Yes.
Yes, you have to see Pontypool. Put it on your list, write it down. Again, Tony Burgess, written, starring Stephen McHattie. And again, if you don't know Stephen McHattie's name, I'll guarantee you've seen him like a fucking dozen times, if not more.
He's in 300. He's in
Eastern Promises. Watchmen. He's in Appaloosa. He's in if you're into horror movies, he did one Z. It was the Doctor. He's in he's in tons and tons and tons of stuff. TV series. Holy shit, man. I remember watching him in that fucking awful TV series Werewolf, where Red Werewolf, or it was Red and then Werewolf, I think it was. Anyway, he was the best part of it. So anyway,
those of you that are too high up may confuse him with Lance Henriksen.
Lance Henriksen, who today turned 82
of the podcast.
He's 82. That fucking blows my mind.